Reading from the Krishna book, chapter 46, Uddhava visits Vṛndāvana. I fasted yesterday for Ekadasi, so. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Vijnana Timarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya. Chaksuran Mulatam Yena Tasmai Sri Gunave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale. Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sapadantikam. Vanshakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha. Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasade Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I'm transitioning in between subjects. So I don't really have a fixed subject, but I like this story because it's Uddhava visits Vṛndāvana, and hopefully Dhanurdhara Swami will visit Vṛndāvana. I'm scheduled to leave late tomorrow night. I have my taxi driver for the last 40 years, but I haven't seen in two years, Brijbasi Gopal picking me up. I'll arrive at 1:30 in the morning. I'll bathe, and then I will I'll chant, and then hopefully I'll go to the gardens of Vṛndāvana to take Brijbasi rotis. My friend is taking some people, so I am more than excited to visit the Dham. I've lived there most of my life, actually. I've been more in Vṛndāvana than any place in the world, including the place where I grew up. Because I came to Vṛndāvana in 1976, and I was there for 44 years. 20 years straight, and then 20 years half and half. So it's my home, my friends. I have so many friends there. And Sadhu Sanga. You know, I got a phone call from one of my friends the other day. Not a phone call, a text message. It was a voice message, and he's a person that you can never ever see because he's so sick. He can only get out of his bed for 5 or 6 hours a day maximum, and I sometimes see him in Vṛndāvana when he goes, but he's not there now. So he sent me a text message. No, voice message. And he's very advanced. And he was speaking about Sri Radha's separation from Krishna. And I just listened to it. I asked him to share what he's thinking about. And it really gave me a hankering for Vṛndāvana. And that conviction entered into my practices and my chanting. So sadhu sanga is so important, and I'm going to Vṛndāvana to get sadhu sanga to increase my faith. I mentioned this morning that we're not a physical distance away from Krishna. It's not like this. You can go as far as you want for an unlimited amount of miles, and you don't go to the spiritual world. It's a different dimension, and that dimension is crossed by faith. And faith comes from hearing from sadhus who have conviction. There's something about conviction that mixes in with one's vibration, that communicates that conviction. There's always that famous story with Mahatma Gandhi, and somebody came up and said, my son's eating too many sweets or something, and he's getting sick. Can you tell him not to eat sweets? He says, come back next week. Then the boy came back next week. Mahatma Gandhi said, don't eat too many sweets. And then they asked Mahatma Gandhi, well, why did you wait a week before telling him? He said, because I first had to give up eating sweets. So there's something with conviction. I always tell the story of Dr. Fakir Mohan when he asked these Sanskrit students, who knows the Shastra, who is Shastragya? And he says, one who practices. One who practices knows. I'm trying to think of something I heard about that recently. One who practices. Oh yeah, this morning, right after my class, I turned on to Wisdom of the Sages, because Simon Haas was on explaining about the Dharma Code. And then after he explained about the Dharma Code, and the first ones were non-violence, and he was explaining the importance and truthfulness. I guess there was one other. He said, but without the fourth one, the other three remained theoretical, and the fourth one was discipline, the implementation of it. Otherwise, the other things never become realized. You only realize the truth when you apply it, and therefore it changes your vision. So to hear from someone who's not just speaking about Krishna, but living a life of devotion, it can give you that conviction, that faith. And faith is how we move forward in anything. Without faith, we don't move forward. C.S. Lewis, in a book called Mere Christianity, he wrote about people leaving Christianity, and he said it's never an intellectual thing. He said people don't renew their faith, and therefore faith, the conviction, recedes in the consciousness. That's the opposite. But people who are renewing their faith and developing their faith and practicing, Nastapayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevya. Nityam. It means eternal, it means always, and it means every day. Bhavata bhakti naishtaki. Then you develop fixedness. And from fixedness comes taste. Just like water is tasty when it's pure, when it's just water. So when devotion is just devotion. And it doesn't mean renunciation. When you're always, working in the world, practicing, when you become fixed in God's will, then devotion becomes devotion, and you taste devotion. So conviction is so important. Anyway, I'm going to begin to read this story and comment on it. By the way, greetings from The Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mandir in New Jersey, the home of Gopakishore and Jai-Shri Radhe. Gopa built it himself, actually. So let's read. Of course, I'll give a little introduction. How does Uddhava get to go to Vṛndāvana? Because Uddhava, everyone has a relationship with Krishna. We have to awaken that relationship in our hearts. That's the goal of life. If the goal of life is love, then the goal is to have a relationship, because love manifests the relationship. So these are the parikas, the eternal associates. And Uddhava, outside of Vṛndāvana, is the topmost devotee, because he's called a parishad. It's a servant, but there's a kind of servant, there's more than a servant. He's your confidant. He's your trusted minister and advisor. Because outside of Vṛndāvana, it's reverence for Krishna. It's mixed with reverence, everything. And he's also a disciple of Brihaspati, and he's also Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva means the most intelligent person on the planet. And therefore, Krishna trusts him to give a confidential message to the gopis who are suffering in this. I know in the Vilap Kushmanjali, there's one prayer to Radharani. With the red lac of your lotus feet, please cure this servant who is near dead by the snake bite of separation. So the residents of Vṛndāvana are near dead. It's called, I think it's called Mita, but it's one of the emotions that come from your relationship with Krishna, that sometimes in the absence of Krishna, you wish you were dead. But you don't die, because that would give Krishna too much pain. And at the same time, there's no duality, because that is love. That is the highest ecstasy at the same time. And how do we understand that? We have to achieve it. We have to go there. We have to attain that platform. Just like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I was explaining Jaiva Dharma. He said, Bhakti is innate in the soul. It's the eternal Dharma. It's a teaching that's meant to be spread always. But you won't understand it until you achieve a certain level of realization. You'll have some kind of frame of reference to understand. But it's inconceivable, because God has inconceivable powers. So to understand God and everything he does by logic doesn't work, because logic is one of cause and effect in this world. God is above that. So somehow their separation is so deep that Krishna it has to go back now. People are telling him he has to go back. But there's reasons why he doesn't go back immediately, or that's another philosophical story. But he sends Uddhava, his most trusted servant, with a message for the gopis. Nanda Mahārāja returned to Vṛndāvana without Kṛṣṇa and Balarāma. How are they feeling? It's love. We have attachment to people, but it can't compare to the attachment that the soul has for God. It can give us kind of a lens to imagine, because the attachment to God is our eternal relationship, and he's Priya, he's most dear, because he's the soul of the soul. Our life, without the soul, the body is not dear. And without Krishna, the soul is not dear. So he's Priya. He's the most dear. And that attraction, it's so powerful. And now they're in separation from him. They were in separation when he left. Now, Nanda Mahārāja is coming back. Krishna said, I shall return. And now he's not returning. He was accompanied only by the cowherd boys and men. So everyone came back except Krishna. Mother Yaśodā, Śrīmatī Rādhārāṇī, and all the other residents of Vṛndāvana. Oh, it was certainly a very pathetic scene for the gopīs, Mother Yaśodā, Śrīmatī Rādhārāṇī, and all the other residents of Vṛndāvana. We have attachments, and when we're separated from our attachments, then it's very difficult for us. But they have awakened their eternal relationship with Krishna. So the separation is so deep. And now you can imagine, after being away for some time, and Nanda Mahārāja comes back, and sometimes they see the cowherd boys in the distance. And now they all come back. The gopīs. So the gopīs and the parents are just devastated. Many devotees have tried to make adjustments to Krishna's being away from Vṛndāvana because, according to expert opinion, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, never ever goes a step out of Vṛndāvana. He always remains there. So how do they understand that Krishna has gone from Vṛndāvana? Actually, he can't be gone from Vṛndāvana. Krishna can't be gone from Vṛndāvana because he eternally resides in Vṛndāvana. But he's aprakat, which means unmanifested. Because prema, love of Godhead, is like an energy that flows from the soul to God, but it's like a river, and a river to flow powerfully needs two embankments. So love needs the embankment of union and separation. So they're always manifest there simultaneously. Union and separation. So they're devastated. And now but Krishna never steps a foot out of Vṛndāvana. Because Krishna means Vṛndāvana. Vṛndāvana is the environment that Krishna lives in. It means when God wants to manifest himself fully, Akila Rasam Rita Murti, in the full embodiment of love, an environment manifests simultaneously, and that's Vṛndāvana. So if Krishna is eternal, then Vṛndāvana is eternal. And Krishna's being in Vṛndāvana is eternal. Because there's no Krishna in Vṛndāvana, there's no Krishna. If Krishna is out of Vṛndāvana, there's no Krishna. Then Krishna doesn't exist. Because Krishna is the full embodiment of love. And this environment manifests to facilitate it. So great acharyas are saying, adjusting why Krishna went out of Vṛndāvana, the explanation of expert devotees that Krishna was actually not absent from Vṛndāvana. He came back with Nanda Mahārāja's promise. When Krishna was starting from Mathura on the chariot driven by Akrura and the gopīs were blocking the way, Krishna assured them that he was coming back just after finishing his business in Mathura. He told them not to be overwhelmed and in this way pacified them. Wow, I'm going to go to Nandagram and I'll go on the roof and I'll look on that path where Akrura took Krishna from Vṛndāvana. And that scene as he's leaving, where the gopis are grabbing the reins, they're throwing themselves in front of the horses. And the separation of the gopis as Krishna is leaving is so intense that as Krishna's chariot is going, they're following the chariot. And then finally, Krishna, he somehow his Leela is to take him to Vṛndāvana, but his heart's in Vṛndāvana. He's also considerate for the gopis, just to pacify them. Because again, what we're talking about pleasure, which is love. And if it's God's pleasure or love, it's at the highest degree of pleasure and love. And it's because it's an emotion, it's so intense. So they're just following it, and some have become like ghosts, just staring as Krishna is leaving. And Krishna's just feeling for them. He turns back and just gives them enough hope to maintain their lives. And he says, I will return. I will return. But when he failed to come back with Nanda Mahārāja, it appeared that he either cheated them or could not keep his promise. But either that is not satisfactory. This is God. He must have the supreme, beautiful will. So how can he cheat his devotees? What is this breaking his promise? So again, expert devotees, however, decided that Krishna was never a cheater nor a breaker of promises. Krishna, in his original identity, returned with Nanda Mahārāja and stayed with the gopis and Mother Yaśodā in his bhava expansion. So again, God is there in our love. It's not that our love is greater than God, but God comes according to the devotee's love. And their thoughts of Krishna, in love of Krishna, it is a reality. So even though he is unmanifest, they had such separation from Krishna that he was there. And that's exactly the message. That's exactly the message that I need a little, just tell Jai Radha, I need a little hot tea. I'll wait for you to come back. Just tell her. A little hot tea. Okay. No, she'll bring it. It's so Uddhava's message eventually, when he gets to the gopis, and there's a place where he sees the gopis called Uddhava Khati, and it was underwater for many, many years. And then I believe Narayan Maharaj took us there, when he just used to take me and a few of our godbrothers, the places that people were never there before. And we once asked him, besides Prabhupada, which of the devotees of Bhakti Siddhanta were like Prema Bhaktas? And he said, Janardhan Mahārāja. And when we came there, Janardhan Mahārāja was sitting under a tree chanting and crying. Uddhava Khati. So he came to this place. But the message he delivered to them is that Krishna said, I am there in my bhava manifestation. And that's our separation from God. It's our consciousness. Because Sadulabha, bhakti is very difficult to obtain at the level of bhava bhakti, because when you have that, then you control Krishna. So if you have bhava and you want Krishna, there's Krishna. So he's there in his bhava manifestation. Unmanifest on the external level for the embankment of separation to intensify. But on the internal, the uppercut, the unmanifest, he's always there. Kṛṣṇa and Balarāma remained in Mathura, not in their original forms, but in their expansions as Vāsudeva and Sankarsana. The real Kṛṣṇa and Balarāma were in Vṛndāvana in their bhava manifestations, where in Mathura they appeared in the prabhav and vaibhav expansion. So God is very interesting that one personality can appear in many places without becoming less, without becoming many. He still remains the one absolute truth, the same person, because he has those inconceivable potencies. But when he wants to enjoy reverential love, then he covers his intimate side. Krishna means God fully manifesting his intimate side. So he covers his intimate side. And the environment supports that love. Just like we may have an intimate side, but we go to work, that side of us is covered. Especially if you're the boss or you're a high court judge. And for that consciousness and attitude, there's a different type of environment that's manifest. So when Krishna wants to enjoy reverential love, we can call him Vasudeva. And we can call Balarāma Sankarsana. Is it the same person? Yes. But not Krishna, because Krishna is that person when he's at home. So a person at home has a personal name. The personal name refers to all of his different relationships, where mother or father or boss or son, the personal name, they refer to a particular aspect that the person is manifesting. If someone calls you father, you're manifesting a particular part of your personality. If someone calls you lover, you're manifesting a particular part of your personality. Someone says friend, you're manifesting a particular part of your personality. But when the intimate side is covered, then that's blessed. It's the same person, but just not manifest fully. But in the spiritual world, when it's not manifest fully, it's manifested with an environment to facilitate that type of love. This is the expert opinion of advanced devotees. Externally, however, they were absent from Vṛndāvana. Therefore, when Nanda Mahārāja was preparing to return to Vṛndāvana, there was some discussion between him and the boys concerning how they could live in separation. Conclusion is, to separate was reached by mutual agreement, because Krishna had a mission to perform. So he had to leave Vṛndāvana for that mission. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. When there was when there is a discrepancy in religion, he appears. And he was separated from his parents, so he felt he had to spend time there. So he didn't come back. Vasudeva and Devaki, who happened to be the real parents of Krishna and Balarāma, wanted to keep them now because of the death of Kamsa. So why were they taken to Vṛndāvana? Why were they taken to Vṛndāvana? Because fear of Kṛṣṇa. Now Kṛṣṇa is dead, and now Kṛṣṇa and Balarāma came, killed Kṛṣṇa. So now the parents said, no, you should stay. Now, naturally, the father of Kṛṣṇa and Balarāma wanted them to remain specifically for the reformatory function of purification, the sacred thread ceremony. So there's different rites of passage that are very, very important in the Vedic society to create samskars, to create the proper impressions in the consciousness. Because what we are we are the impressions in our consciousness. And a parent wants the child to have as many good impressions as possible. And I explained, good impressions means the attraction for things that are good and the aversion to things that are bad. So in a proper culture, it's not just the parents, it's the society and the functions you have, where you develop a duty or an obligation for a certain set standard of behavior. So it was very important that Krishna, even though he's God, has the reference of the sacred thread ceremony, where he gets, that's what Diksha is. He said this commitment he has. Commitment, playing the role of a human being, but what's the commitment? The commitment is to, well, the first part of it is committing yourself in such a way that you're reflecting on what you did before and promise never to do it. What is it? There. And then the consciousness and belonging to the tradition of your guru. Tilak is a marking that means I belong. I just described Vedic culture. The woman had certain markings. It gave this identity in relationship to the husband. So they also wanted to give him a proper education, for this is the duty of the father. Another consideration was that all the friends of Kamsa outside Mathura were preparing to attack Mathura. For that reason, also Krishna's presence was required. Krishna did not want Vṛndāvana disturbed by enemies like Dantavakra and Jarasan. If Krishna would go to Vṛndāvana, these enemies would not only attack Mathura, but would go on to Vṛndāvana, and the peaceful inhabitants of Vṛndāvana would be disturbed. So again, here what we see is, we see Krishna's consideration. God in his perfection has to be loving, and loving means that you're focused on satisfying people and therefore considerate and understanding of their desires. So Krishna loves the residents of Vṛndāvana. He's afraid if he goes back now, after Kamsa is killed and the allies of Kamsa are ready to attack Mathura, and Krishna is the one that killed Kamsa, that if Krishna goes to Vṛndāvana, then they may also come there. So he's thinking in a considerate way. Although the inhabitants of Vṛndāvana felt separation from Krishna, the resulting ecstasy, bhava, caused them to perceive that Krishna was always present with them by his lila or pastimes. So in that separation is a very important feeling in bhakti. Because what separation means is that the object that was before you is now in your heart. And the object that was before you, you now see everywhere. So in this sense, separation is very, very powerful emotion. And it caused them to see Krishna everywhere. In their Lila Smaran, it present with him by his Lila. Since Krishna had departed from Vṛndāvana and gone to Mathura, the inhabitants of Vṛndāvana, especially Mother Yaśodā, Nanda Mahārāja, Śrīmatī Rādhārāṇī, the gopīs and the cowherd boys, were simply thinking of Krishna at every step. This is what happens when you lose a loved one. You can't get it out of your mind. But with God, that thoughts of him become God. So in separation, you just, it becomes rasa. It becomes consuming emotion. And rasa vaisa, that's what the spiritual world is. So now there's consuming emotion. They're feeling separation from Krishna. And every day they may go out and look at it. Sometimes someone's late and you're waiting for them to come. I remember I was in Colombia and my taxi was a little late. So I was looking outside. I was looking outside. Then I walked down the street, looked down the next street. When is it coming? Sometimes we have that experience that when we want something that's not there, we're always thinking of it. We're always looking for it. They were thinking, here Krishna was playing in this way. Here Krishna was blowing his flute. Krishna was joking in this way. And Krishna was embracing us like this. This is called Lila Smarana, and it is the process of association with Krishna, most recommended by great devotees, even Lord Chaitanya, when he was at Puri, enjoying Lila Smarana association with Krishna. And the separation, that image of your beloved comes into your mind. At the same time, you're looking everywhere. Hey, hey, Radhe Vrajadeva Ke Chalalite. Hey, Nanda Suno Kuta. Goshanta Biti Sarvato Vrajapare. Kedar Mahavivalo. The 6 Goswamis were going all around Vṛndāvana. Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? As Prabhupada told that young Saraswati, who was the daughter of Malati and Shamsundar, when he was their secretary, and she had this deity, I'm not telling, I told the story many times, but it was silver. And it was a silver deity given by a life member. And Prabhupada knew that was like 5 years' work of any ordinary Indian. You can't leave it out, it'll be stolen. And he had the parents store it away and get a mold and make it in brass. But when she saw that it wasn't her silver Krishna, she started to cry, I want Krishna, I want Krishna. Krishna's there, no, that's not my Krishna. And it went on for several days, and it was such a disturbance that Prabhupada called this little girl into his office and asked, what is the problem? She says, I want my Krishna, I want my Krishna. Prabhupada said, that's very good, because that's the mood of the highest devotees. They never say, I have Krishna. They say, I want Krishna. And then Prabhupada said, I'll teach you a song about this. He began singing the 6 Goswami Astakam. Those in the most exalted position of devotional service and ecstasy can live with Krishna always by remembering his pastimes. We have to think of Krishna. Prabhupada told my godbrother Vishal, if you read Krishna book every day, you'll be happy. So even I think Prabhupada told us in Gurukul that I'm not sure, anyway, the children could like put their hands behind their back and eat like cows. We said when you take prasadam, you can meditate on Krishna taking prasadam with the cowherd boys. The very beginning, Prabhupada said, he said, this is the mental culture of Krishna consciousness. We should think more of Krishna and Krishna's pastimes. And read, because this is the method of actually developing love for Krishna. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has given us a transcendental literature entitled Krishna Bhavanamrita, which is full with Krishna's pastimes. Exalted devotees can remain absorbed in Krishna thought by reading such books. Any book of Krishna Lila, even this book, Krishna, or our teachings of Lord Chaitanya, is actually solace for the devotees feeling separation from Krishna. So it's nice, with couch within this Lila, Prabhupada is taking out so many instructions because she's showing how the consciousness of the gopis work. They weren't with Krishna, they were always thinking of Krishna. And by thinking of Krishna, they were with Krishna. And Prabhupada's saying that that's our process. We're not with Krishna, we should be in the mood of separation from Krishna. And therefore, we should be remembering his pastimes. And then we're also with Krishna. Because it's not just for the gopis. Krishna is there in his bhava and expansion for everyone. And Kṛṣṇa and Balarāma did not return to Vṛndāvana can be adjusted as follows. They did not break their promise to return to Vṛndāvana, nor were they absent, but their presence was necessary in Mathura. So for the Leela, they become unmanifest in Vṛndāvana. And as Krishna leaves Vṛndāvana, he checks more and more of his intimate side, and the environment begins to transform to correspond to the type of love of those who want to worship God in a more reverential way. And at the same time in the Leela, it's shown ordinary people's understanding that he had business to do. He had to get his sacred thread, he had to get education, he had to in the meantime, Uddhava, a cousin brother of Krishna's, came to see Krishna from Dwarka. So what's happening at the same time, this is such an important point, that the pleasure of God is our hearts, because that's where he puts his pleasure potency, which is the Bhakti Anand. So it's our hearts. That's where Krishna puts that potency. I'm having brain fog actually, because I fasted yesterday. I can see that. It's amazing. because generally all the thoughts stay in your head. Anyway, I'll go on. Oh yes, I now understand what's happening. So what they're telling is this is the gopis separation. At the same time, what's happening, and this is how spiritual life works, this is called the transcendental system, that God hears your heart. And when it sincerely wants him, he manifests in the form of his devotee to give himself to you. So this is an important part of Krishna consciousness. And ultimately, that heart, when it goes from the platform of hankering for Krishna, to desiring a relationship with Krishna, then Krishna manifests. Ayendra Prabhu, someone asked him, when are you ready for Raganuga Bhakti? Which means cultivating your eternal relationship with Krishna, Seva, Sadhaka Rupena, Siddha Rupena, Chatrahi. He said, when are you ready? He said, when there's dire necessity. Dire when you really want it more than anything else, because you value it more than anything else. Krishna hears that voice in the heart, and he reciprocates by giving himself. So Krishna is listening to the hearts of the gopis by the transcendental system. He's in Dwarka, they're in Vṛndāvana, and Krishna is listening to their hearts. And at the same time, the Leela Shakti, which is serving Krishna, makes the arrangements so everything is adjusted. He was the son of Vasudev's brother and was almost the same age as Krishna. His bodily features resembled Krishna's almost exactly. After Krishna returned from his teacher's home, he was pleased to see Uddhava, who happened to be his dearmost friend. Krishna wanted to send him to Vṛndāvana with a message to the residents to pacify for their deep feelings of separation. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Yeyata mam papadyate tamstataiva bhajamyam. Krishna is very responsive. He responds in proportion to the devotee's advancement in devotional service. Prabhupada said such a simple, profound statement about Krishna. He said, Krishna is responsive. There's no tricks in Krishna consciousness. It's very straightforward. If you want God, you have God. We're just separated by the lack of intensity of our desire. And so now Krishna is hearing what's happening in Mathura about the devotees, their separation. Uddhava is described as the most exalted personality in Vishnu dynasty, being almost equal to Krishna. He was a great friend of Krishna and being the direct student of Brahaspati, teacher and priest of the heavenly planets. He was very intelligent and sharp in decision. So he was a minister. He was brilliant. And he was the most exalted personality. And he was so close to Krishna that even though there's reverential mood in Dwarka, he became a close friend, couched in that intimacy of, couched in the consciousness of reverence. Intellectually, he was highly qualified. Krishna, being his very loving friend, wanted to send Uddhava to Vṛndāvana just to study the highly elevated, ecstatic devotional service practice there. even if one is highly elevated material education, and is even the disciple of Brihaspati, he still has to learn from the gopīs and the other residents of Vṛndāvana how to love Krishna to the highest degree. It was Krishna's special favor to Uddhava to send them to Vṛndāvana with a message for the residents there, which meant to pacify them. Okay, it's the flow. When you're in the flow, you don't forget. It's just the Ekadasi. Okay, Jamuna, any point here that struck you?
Yes, Mr. Maharaj, but I also want to, I'm at the Bhakti Center, so I want to give you darshan of Radha Mulidhar Gaurasandra before you go.
Oh,
so
what I love.
You go.
Wow, Shri Radha Muralidhar ki jai. Wonderful, wonderful. Wow.
I knew I'd be here, so I wanted to get here before the curtains close. I really love what you were just saying about that. Krishna is in his so I wrote it down. Is in his bhava experience for everyone. We may not be able to see his physical form, but in his bhava expansion, he's there for all of us all the time. And that the distance, as you said, is not geographical. It's internal. It's by faith. Love that point.
That's why we hear these things, so we can aspire for the right things. That's why we have to hear regularly. Thank you, Jamuna. Anybody else like to say hello?
I have a question.
Hey, Janta, Haribo.
I've been thinking about this subject, and it's very nice that you talked about it. The question of if you're thinking about the Leela or meditating on the Leela or even writing about the Leela, and you imagine details that are not in the text that we get from the Acharyas, is that offensive or is that something that's permitted?
Well, because we're not directly have Sakshat Darshan of Krishna, our thoughts will be somewhat speculative, but couched within a general Shastric understanding. You know, it's not like in Banki Bihari temple in Vṛndāvana is the most famous temple. And they keep on closing the curtains because the deity, out of attachment for his devotees, left the temple several times. This is the folklore. So, you know, it's a family lineage. So it came down, and these younger people, maybe in their early 20s, were to dress the deities one day. And they put Banki Bihari in jeans with a cell phone. And the people almost killed them. It was such a scandal. So, but we know that Krishna wore, you know, there's this Bihar Pidam, you know, so there's a peacock feather. So, you know, what peacock feather, a big one, a small one. And Prabhupada gave directions of what Krishna looks like and how you dress him. And he puts jewelry on, so you might have to meditate on the exact jewelry, but no. So we have some point for creativity. And if we have devotion, that conception will turn into reality. Just like Krishna is blue, but he's a transcendental blue. But we think of Krishna as blue. Do we have the color exactly right? Not just by a material conception, but with bhakti and devotion, you'll enter into the real thing. So yeah, you can that kind of speculation's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, very well. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Yeah, whenever you talk about the fact that the residents of Vṛndāvana, when they were in separation, they couldn't, you know, commit suicide because that would have hurt Krishna. And in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, wow, you know, I'm always struck by how secure they are in Krishna's love for them. Because the emphasis is always on the devotees' love for Krishna. But for them to not commit suicide because of how that would make Krishna feel, that just shows how secure they were in Krishna's love for them.
That's a nice point, Gail. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else like to say hello?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Here.
And Kishore Radha.
Haribo.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Shore.
Oh, Sode, Hare Krishna. I still have to answer one letter from you. I will do that. Okay,
Thank you, Maharaj.
thank you. Haribo, anyone else?
Hare Guru
Hare
Maharaj.
Krishna Maharaj.
Hey, okay, we got Joe Kaylee there. Okay, Haribo.
Gonna miss you, Guru Maharaj.
Wow, I think I'm gonna organize some programs at Bhakti Bandhav.
Yeah,
Maybe Tota and Sri Rupa. So you
We're
can
gonna-
all go up there.
yeah, we're gonna try to go for the installation next week for Kartik.
I think that's great. Maybe write them. Maybe they want you to bring up some prasadam.
Yes, whatever I can do, but we will miss you, Guru Maharaj, but I'm happy that you are headed back to the Dham.
Okay, this is Ram Sadowski. Jayanta, this is the famous Ram Sadowski. Okay, anybody else? Say hello to
Guru Maharaj.
Jayanta.
Hey, Krishna
Okay.
Maharaj, future class.
Hi, Bo.
Hare Bol. Hey Rama.
Hey, Rama.
Okay, anybody else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Krishna.
Śrīmatī Rādhārāṇī.
How'd it go? Okay,
Hare Krishna
Namaste,
Maharaj.
Maharaj.
hi, Bo.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Travel safe to Vṛndāvana. Please pray for all of us.
I'll join you in Vṛndāvana very soon.
This is Yudhisthira. I'm not in Vṛndāvana except for a little bit.
But the background is Vṛndāvana.
I took this picture in '79.
Yeah. Okay, I'll see you there soon. Hi, Bo.
I hope so. I'm trying to plan it.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thanks for the class.
Okay, Haribo. Who's that?
Surya Radhika Devidasi. I'm my mom.
Oh, okay, Haribo.
Thank you.
Ksenia from Moscow.
Oh, nice
I'm
to see you. Go ahead.
Really happy for you that you're going to Vrindavan, and I like the words that Krishna is the soul of our soul. So I've never thought about Krishna in this way. So I start thinking, how it is possible to live without Krishna if he is the soul of my soul? So it's very interesting for me. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a nice thing.
Thank you.
Very nice. Okay. I'm going soon to Vrindavan. I'm going directly. The first day I go, I'm going to Sridhar, Mali, with the rotis. Anybody wants to give something, I can deliver it for him, for his family and the service he does. Anybody else like to say hello?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, it's Indira.
Indira. Great.
Yeah, have a great trip. And I was curious, are these going to continue these morning, or will the time?
Well, morning, I'm not sure I can continue the 11 o'clock one, that on Sunday. The other two, because it may be too late for me in Vrindavan. I'll see. I haven't decided yet. It's very difficult for me, even the afternoon classes, because it's the afternoon, not the morning. And I go to bed early. It may be even, we'll see. I hope so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Good.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Namaste here.
Haribo.
Thank you for the class and wish you a safe trip.
Let's all meet in Govardhan in February.
Hope so.
Okay, anybody
I
else?
hope so. Please pray for us.
Anybody else?
And if you could give our good wishes to Leela Vilasini, who's recovering from a Yeah,
She's,
that's,
she's not suffering. She had no pain at all,
Thank you.
Jayanta. And she told you how mystical it was. And
yes,
she copied me in the message you sent to her and her response.
yeah.
But she likes the idea of the shovel in the front of her motorcycle. So, okay, okay.
Have a-
Okay, anybody else? Okay, all right. Anybody else?
Maharaj, I don't know if you wanted to repeat it in this class, but I didn't quite catch. You were asking if anybody wanted to help somebody.
I'm
in the
saying
chat.
I'm going to that Sridhar, that nice sadhu. And I've been always supporting and helping his family. So, and they've been serving so many Vaishnavas. So if anybody wants to give something, then I can deliver it there to him. I'm going to give something. Yeah, that's all I was saying.
Oh, no. I mean, from this morning, it's like you want to help somebody travel someplace.
No, just that.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Otherwise, I'm going to go to have the organic soup with the vegetables from the garden here. The garden state. This is the garden state. There's not one, this is the only garden left in the whole garden state, but it used to be the garden state. Okay. All right. I'm going to go now. Haribo.